Hi, it's Penny here. So, next year, I would like to do more rereading of books that I've previously loved. I always say when I keep books on my bookshelves that these are all books that I would love to reread at some point or lend to other people. But if I'm keeping them because I think I would like to reread them, then at some point I need to actually reread books. But because there are so many books that I still want to read that I haven't read, I never make time for rereads, which is really sad because I love so many of these books and so many other books that aren't even on my shelves. And wouldn't it be great to get to have that experience again? Also, there are a lot of books that I read a while back that I did really like at the time, and I often will tell people that they're really great books and recommend them, but I haven't read them in a really long time. So can I really defend those recommendations given recently I did a video about how well I remember books, and let's be honest, my memory is not the best. So for some of these books, if I read them again, maybe I would then be able to more strongly recommend them. But also because I don't remember them well, I feel like the reread experience could again, if these books still stand up to my more recent reading taste, I think the reread experience could be really great for some of these books. So actually what I'm going to do is I feel like if I start now, I can start looking back at books from 10 years ago, books that if I read them 10 years ago and really love them and haven't reread them since then, I think they're really due a reread. And most years I read these days about 150 books a year, but if I add up all the books that I read 2012 when I started Goodreads through to 2015, we also get about 150 books. So my plan is to kind of put together a list of books I want to reread in 2025 based on those several years. And then going forward, each year we can look back at the books I read 10 years previous and decide if we want to reread any of those in the next year. I'm not sure if that makes sense, but it makes sense to me. That's the main thing that matters. So what we're going to do in this video, I've taken a long time to get to the point of what this video is. But what we're going to do in this video is basically go through all the books that I read in 2012 to 2015 and decide which books I want to reread from those years. So I've got my Goodreads up in front of me. We're going to start with 2012 and I've ordered it by author because I think that'll make it easier when there's big chunks of a single series. So right at the top we have The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. It's been a long time since I read The Hobbit, so actually I think we're going to reread it. So we'll start a little reread list here. Then next on the list we have The Name of the Wind. I'm not rereading that until we get book 3 in the series. I've reread it multiple times in the past when I thought we were going to get the 3rd book in the series and then we didn't, so at this point I'm not rereading it until the 3rd book comes. Then we have The Christmas Wedding, which is actually the first book I ever marked read on Goodreads, and I think I gave it 1 star because it was terrible, so 100% not rereading. Then we have Game of Thrones and Clash of Kings. This is another series where I will not be rereading it until the next book in the series comes out because we don't know when that's gonna be. Then we have Foundation by Mercedes Lackey. This is a newer Valdemar book. There are Valdemar books that I haven't read yet that I would like to read, and I would definitely do that before rereading Foundation because I didn't really like it. Then we have 12 books from the Sookie Stackhouse series. Part of me is tempted to say I would like to reread the Sookie Stackhouse series. However, realistically, am I going to have time because it's such a long series? And am I going to enjoy it? Probably not. Because my reading tastes have changed. If I had nothing else to read, I would probably reread it, but that's not reality, so probably not. And then as well we have the Elemental Assassin series. I think there's 7 books here from that series, and I think I would like to reread this series at some point. However, I know there are books later in the series that I've read more recently, so let's make it a problem for me in 2030 because this is a 17 book series. No, 19 books. 19 book series. I don't have time for that right now. And also this is another paranormal romance one. So will I like it? Probably not. Debatable. Sometimes kind of fun though, so maybe. And then right at the end here, I have Catching Fire and Mockingjay. I don't know what happened to the Hunger Games, but I do know this is another one where I have reread it since 2012. So I'm not due another reread yet, but whenever we come up to those other rereads in this project, if I continue it, which I would like to. We'll see how it goes in 2025 though. Anyway, there's another reminder in the future for me to consider whether I want to reread this series. And that is all the books that I read in 2012. Very different reading year compared to like my last year of reading. Okay, so then 2013, this is the year where I did this Coursera course about the origins of fantasy or something. So right off the bat, we have The Invisible Man, Dracula, and Frankenstein. I think for that course, actually, I also read The Portable Poe, or like some of the books from Edgar Allan Poe, some of the stories from Edgar Allan Poe. Also Mosses from an Old Manse. Some Grimm fairy tales, and actually I think the Martian Chronicles. Oh, and Alice in Wonderland. I think that's all. So these are a bunch of classic fantasy type books that I read around that time. I would actually like to reread The Invisible Man, Dracula, and Frankenstein, but the others probably not. Okay, then as well we have Sword Dancer by Jennifer Roberson. This is one I'm pretty sure I've reread since then. Let me double check. Actually, it says I haven't. However, I definitely read later books in the series later, so let's not make a decision on that series now, because I feel like if I did, I would decide not to reread it anyway. Then we have The Host by Stephenie Meyer. Ooh. I feel like this is a book where I would say I definitely would like to reread it again in the future, and I haven't read it since 2013, so I guess it goes on the list. I feel a little bit mixed on that one. I think what I'm going to do is we're going to put together the list of books I say I want to reread, and then maybe we'll have to do some prioritization depending on how many we get. That's a good idea. Okay, then we have The Dolphins of Pern by Anne McCaffrey. This is another one where I know I've read other books in the series later, but also a really long series that I don't know that I'd be willing to reread. Or if I was going to reread this series, I actually think I'd want to reread like the first 10 books maybe, and not this one. So for now, it's a no. Then we have A Storm of Swords and Feast of Crows. Oh, I've got A Storm of Swords here as 2 books. Sneaky past Penny, making it like you've read more books than you have. Same story as before. Not reading those until we get Winds of Winter. Then we have The Left Hand of Darkness. Now, I have a plan to read the whole series that book is a part of. So I think for now I'm going to leave it off the reread list and leave it in that series project instead. Then I have a couple of books from Mercedes Lackey's Elemental Masters series. I don't think I can face rereading that at the moment, or maybe even ever. I don't know how I feel about that series. It's one that I really loved when I did read it, but like now, who knows? So for now, let's just not worry about it. Then I have a couple more Sookie Stackhouse ones. So there's a lot of books in that series. Then I have Looking for Alaska by John Green. So I actually have this on my shelf, which would make the argument for I should reread it if I'm keeping it on my shelf. But I have been thinking maybe I shouldn't be keeping it on my shelf, because even though I enjoyed reading it at the time, I don't read much YA now. I definitely don't read YA contemporary ever. And like, I just think I've read so much more since then that it wouldn't have the impact that it had for me at the time. I think this is a sign that I need to unhaul that book, because I really have no interest in rereading it. Then I have a couple more books from the Elemental Assassin series, so no to that. Oh, and then I have Geist by Philippa Ballantyne, so that's a New Zealand author. And those books are on my shelf down there. I would actually really like to reread them, even though I'm somewhat scared that I won't like them again on a reread. But I did really like them at the time. So like, if I did reread it and really love it, that would be great, because I could renew that love for the series. And if I reread it and I don't love it, then maybe I can rethink whether I'm really keeping those books. I'm always worried about unhauling books like that, because there have been books in the past where I owned them, I really loved them, then I decided I didn't like them anymore and I unhauled them, and now future me is like, are you sure you didn't like those, Penny? And I really want to reread them again, but they're books that are really hard to get my hands on, so I can't actually reread them. And this book series actually would be a series that if I unhaul them, it probably would be pretty hard to get my hands on it again. Anyway, let's put it on the reread list. So far, I've pretty much got a bunch of classics and a couple of like romancy books. Do I like classics or romancy books? Not particularly, but I am also excited about rereading all of these, so maybe I don't even know what I like. Let's move on to 2014. So first up, I've got Blood Red Dawn by Karen E. Taylor. This is a book I think my mum gave me, and I think it became clear straight away that it wasn't even the first book in the series, even though here on Goodreads, it's not making it clear. Oh, it says here, Vampire Legacy number 7. Anyway, I wasn't interested in reading that in the first place. Then we have The Emperor's Soul and The Rhythmatist by Brandon Sanderson. The Emperor's Soul, I've reread again since then. The Rhythmatist, I won't be rereading until we get another book in that series, Brandon. Hurry up. Then we have All You Need Is Kill. So this is the original book that Edge of Tomorrow, that movie with Tom Cruise, this is the book that was an adaptation of. And I really liked it. I would like to reread it. I love that movie too. Like, twisty time travel stuff is just something I really like. And this did it well. Then we have Silence by Michelle Segarra. Didn't really like that much. The Slow Regard of Silent Things by Patrick Rothfuss. I actually really liked that, and I am tempted to reread it because I don't know that I have reread it. But also, I should probably just put it with the other Kingkiller books, waiting for the third book in the series, right? Probably. Then we have Sword Singer, which is another Tiger and Dell book that went with Sword Dancer, which I mentioned before. Again, we'll wait on that series till later books in the series come up. Then we have The Return of Nightfall by Mikizaka Raikkonen. So I know that I have recommended in more recent times. This is the second book in the series, but I have recommended the first and second book in the series. But it's been a long time since I read this series. So probably I am due a reread to decide whether I really like it as much as I think I do. But I'll need to reread the first book as well. And I'm kind of surprised that the first book doesn't appear to be one I read at the same time as reading the second book. Okay, then we have Touchstone by Melanie Ron. I will never reread that series because it was really long and boring. The Rosie Black Chronicles were okay, but probably not good enough for me to want to reread, and I really struggled to get hold of the third book in that trilogy, so I don't even know if I could do that now. Then we have A Dance of Dragons. That took me a long time to read, and I know I've said that I will reread this series when Winds of Winter comes out, but I am actually really scared of A Dance of Dragons and having to reread that. I hope that when I do get to that it turns out that my reading tastes have changed so much that it's now easy for me, because at the time it was not. Then we have Tank Girl. I really didn't like that, so I don't think we'll be rereading it. Although I would kind of like to rewatch the movie. Then we have a few more books from the Elemental Masters series by Mercedes Lackey. I don't think I want to reread any of them. We have The Fault in Our Stars and An Abundance of Catherines by John Green. Nope, I don't want to reread either of those. The Princess Bride. That's my favorite movie, but the book was kind of just eh. I can see I've given it 3 stars. You know, probably not. I'll just rewatch the movie. Then I have a bunch of short stories in the Elemental Assassin series, as well as 3 more proper books, but we'll just leave that series for now. Oh, then we have The Fog, The Fire and the Snow by Caroline B. Cooney. I think I would like to reread this series. I have a couple of the books on my shelves somewhere, but not The Fog, not the first book. I would love to get that first book, but I don't know if I'll ever be able to find it. I haven't really been talking about what any of these books are about, but these ones are like point thrillers. So when I read them as a teen, I love them so much. So it'll be very nostalgic to read them again. Also a quick read, probably. I know that when I did read these, because when I read these in what year are we in? 2014. It was a reread. Obviously, I'd read them when I was a teen. But at this point, I also reread The Face on the Milk Carton, and I think I read that whole series. Although I can't see it here. Maybe it's in the next year. Which is about this girl who discovers that she was actually like a missing child, and that her parents aren't really her parents. And of course, she finds out from seeing her face on a milk carton. Anyway, probably don't need to reread that one at this point, but that was kind of fun. Fun nostalgia. Black Swan Rising, I want it to be cool time travel, but it's not. not for me. We do also have here though Fahrenheit 451, and I would like to reread that now that I have read a bit more widely, because I think at the time when I read it I probably didn't fully appreciate it. Then we have The Last Unicorn. Have I reread this since 2014? I have not. I think I might have read some like adaptations of it or something. Anyway, I have The Last Unicorn somewhere on my shelves and I really love it. The movie came out when I was like 5 or something and I loved it. So I'd love to reread the book, rewatch the movie. It'll be a great time all around. Then we have Weather Child by Philippa Ballantyne. So again, it's the New Zealand author I mentioned just before. I think, yes, I reread this in 2019. So I won't reread it yet, even though I'm tempted because I did really like that. Then I have the rest of that series that I mentioned before, the Book of the Order series. So I will definitely be rereading the whole series. I think it was like a fantasy series where these magicians are kind of responsible for keeping ghosts from coming through from the other world. But then it turns out that there's a lot more going on than they realized. Something like that. Like some kind of political conspiracy, perhaps. Or like religious conspiracy. Then we have this random short story anthology, which is where I discovered the Kate Daniels series. So actually the next 2 books I have here as well are the first 2 books in the Kate Daniels series. The only thing I got out of that short story anthology was the Kate Daniels series, so that's fine. And also I don't think I'm due a reread of the Kate Daniels series yet. I'm pretty sure I've done other rereads of the series though, and I'll definitely reread it at some point, but probably not yet. Okay, then we're up to, finally, 2015. This is the longest list, but it's still not that long. So firstly, we have Mistborn. I've reread Mistborn again since then, so we don't need to reread that. We have The Salt God's Daughter. This is a book I gave 1 star, so we definitely won't be rereading that. We have this book, which is like My Life as a White Trash Zombie by Diana Rowland. I quite liked this. I don't know that it would be to my taste now. And obviously I read this first book back then when it would have been more to my taste, and then I never continued on with the series. I think that was probably just because I didn't have the time to commit to it, but I probably still don't have the time to commit to it. But if you really liked, what was that show called? iZombie? I've heard these 2 compared, so... And I think it's like a similar thing where she can eat people's brains and then get their memories or something. It was kind of fun, but like, probably not to my taste anymore. And actually I can see I've only given it 3 stars, so clearly I didn't like it that much at the time either. Then we have the Divergent trilogy. I did like that, but possibly not enough to reread it. And once again, it's a YA fantasy series. It's probably just not to my taste anymore. We have Swordmaker, another Tiger and Dell book. I'm just not up. Like, part of me wants to reread that series, but I'm just not up for it now. Then we have the Lean Startup, so a workbook. Sometimes I do work stuff, or not really anymore, or at least I used to. Anyway, that's a great book, but part of me is tempted just because it was a great book with some great lessons and it would be a quick read. But also I used to own that and I sold it, so probably not. Then we have Elsewhen's by Melanie Rawn. It's a definite no, super boring. Oh, then we have Thirst by Christopher Pike. So this was like a re-release of the original Last Vampire books by Christopher Pike that were like my most favorite books, or like some of my most favorite books as a teenager. So he re-released the original book series as like 2 bind-ups, and then, oops, my battery died. Or I think I filmed for too long. Anyway, Christopher Pike, he then wrote more of the Last Vampire books, rebranded as Thirst, and I hated them. So I don't know, do I want to reread this series? Part of me wants to. Let's put them on the list for now, but maybe I'll take them off. I mean, really, there are a bunch of other Christopher Pike books that I haven't reread since my teens, or I haven't read them since my teens, and I would probably prefer to reread some of those ones. I'll think about it. Then I have The Time Traveler's Wife, which I'm pretty sure is still on my shelves. Does that mean I need to reread it or unhaul it? I do like time travel books, and I did like the twistiness of this, but the more I think about it, the more I don't really like the relationship, because it's basically this man having a relationship through time with this woman, so he can travel through time. And he kind of originally meets her when she's a very young child, but he's already... No, wait. See? Twisty time travel. She first meets him when she's a young child, and I think he tells her, we're going to get married. I don't know. Maybe I should reread it so I can decide if it really is problematic. Maybe that's what I should do. Then we have another book from the Rosie Black Chronicles, which I talked about before. Ooh, then we have Shatter Me. So I actually really liked the beginning of Shatter Me by Tahara Mafi. Then it kind of went into generic dystopian YA sci-fi fantasy, like kind of wannabe X-Men, and I hated that whole part of it. But the beginning, when she's like in the asylum and it's written so creatively, loved it. Could I just reread that bit? I could, but like the rest of the book, no, so we won't be rereading that. I also have here Throne of Glass and Crown of Midnight. Is Crown of Midnight the second book? I guess it must be. I didn't mind that series, but I'm definitely not up for a reread of it, so we won't. It's just not to my taste anymore. I had a good time with the beginning of the series, and then as my taste changed, I liked the series less and less. Then we have We Were Liars by E. Lockhart. I do think I might have that hidden away at the bottom of my bookshelf somewhere, and I did really like it, but it is like kind of a YA mystery story that kind of hinges a lot on the twist being a surprise. I liked it a lot at the time that I read it. Would I like it now? Do I need to reread it to decide whether it stays on my shelves or not? Maybe I need to find out. I actually don't know if it is on my shelves or not. I think it is. If it is, I'll reread it. Oh yeah, then we have a couple more books from Mercedes Lackey's Elemental Masters series that I'm not interested in rereading. Another one from that Valdemar trilogy that I'm not interested in rereading. Oh, then we have the Beldame Apocrypha trilogy by Cameron Hurley. I would love to reread this because I love this series, but I say I loved it, but I haven't read it in like 10 years. So like, can I really go around telling people I love it when I only have vague memories of it? And honestly, I would just love to reread this. It's like a sci-fi series, sci-fi fantasy. It's a sci-fi fantasy series about this bounty hunter who gets involved with some political stuff going on because she used to be an assassin or a bounty hunter, but then some nonsense happened. Honestly, I loved it, but I can't remember everything. So definitely perfect for a reread. Then I have some books here by J.C. Hart. So this is a New Zealand author. Quite a few of these are like fantasy romance, which is just not to my taste, even though I did enjoy like the Maori mythology incorporated in them, but I probably wouldn't reread them. I do think I might reread Burn. I have it on my shelf somewhere. Oh, it's way too squished in there to pull it out. Anyway, this was like a story written like Maiden, Mother, and Crone, so it's in 3 parts, kind of telling a bigger story, but from those 3 different perspectives. And I remember that the first time I read it, I just stayed up all night reading it. So it should be good, if I've remembered correctly. There is also another book here by J.C. Hart called Sun Touched, which was going to be the first book in a series, but she's never continued it, so sadly, we won't be reading that. Then, we have the Midnight Texas series by Charlaine Harris. Now, I know I said I had no interest in rereading Sookie Stackhouse, and this is kind of like a spin-off series in that same world, and I kind of really liked it, but maybe a reread would change my mind. I think now's the time for that reread. And I do have these books on my shelf as well. So then what else? We have the Half Bad series here. I've already reread that. We have Neverwhere by Neil Gaiman, which I don't think I really liked, but I also have here American Gods by Neil Gaiman, which I remembered really liking. But it's been 10 years, so who really knows? Time for a reread. I think at the beginning of this video, a lot of the books I was picking I wasn't super excited about, but now we're moving into books that I remember really loving. Then we have Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn. So I remember really liking that, and I think it's on my shelves. It is way up the top. I kind of don't feel the urge to reread it at the moment, probably just because I haven't been reading any mystery thriller type books. But I also feel like if I don't put it on the list, then why do I have it on the shelves? Okay, then we have some more Elemental Assassin books, so we won't read those. A couple more books from that Black Swan Rising series that I think I only read because I'm a completionist. Then we have Invisible City by A.C. Buchanan, who is another New Zealand author that I really love. And this is just like a really short story, so why wouldn't I reread it? Because I only gave it 4 stars. I would have thought I gave it 5 stars. And honestly, I can't even tell you anything about it at this point, but I know I really liked it. I thought I really liked it. Oh, and then we have the White Cat trilogy by Holly Black. So I haven't read much by Holly Black that I really liked, but this is one that I always say I really liked, and it is on my shelves down here. I think I'd like to reread it. It is a YA series though, so I do worry that I won't like it as much on a reread, but I'm definitely willing to give it a go. And then I can see that the rest of the year I was just reading Kate Daniels, which, as I said before, I think I've reread it since then, so I'm not ready for another reread yet. Okay, so I'm looking at the list I've put together and it's way too long. Let me count the books. Okay, this list is 34 books long, which would mean like reading 3 of these a month for the whole year. That's just not going to happen. Let's pull out some priorities. I am most excited about rereading the Beldame Apocrypha series, so that's definitely going up. I could read Invisible City because it's super short. Probably also the same for Burn. It was pretty short. I kind of want to reread American Gods because of these. I think it's one I liked the most, but also, does Neil Gaiman need promotion at the moment? Or do I want to promote him at the moment? Maybe not. I would definitely like to know about the Book of the Order and whether it stands up to memory. And probably also All You Need Is Kill. What are we up to now? If I can only pick 2 more, what would I pick? Maybe it has to be Fahrenheit 451 and then also The Last Unicorn. I think those are going to be my priority rereads for 2025. But if I could get to any of these other ones, like if my time somehow magically multiplies, then I will as well. So I'm a bit sad now because I want to reread all these books, but also I know I don't have time. I think prioritizing is the right decision, but I'm also sad about it. Although I am also excited about rereading all these books. So pros and cons, pros and cons. Anyway, let me know if you've read any of the books that I talked about, because I would love to chat with you about them down in the comments. And also let me know, like, how often do you reread books? And do you find it really hard to make that decision between rereading books and reading new books? I'd love to know. Do subscribe if you'd like to see more of my bookish videos. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you are doing well, and I will see you next time.